Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books, and I have been covering Disney very closely these past few months. A lot of changes at Disney. Bob Iger is in. Bob Chapek is out. I was calling for Bob Chapek to be pulled out of the company. I thought Bob Iger could do a better job, and the truth of it is he can, but it's not enough. He's going to be on his way out before too long. He only has a 2-year contract. But right now, because Nelson Peltz won, Disney is in kind of a state of woke collapse. There is massive layoffs. You've probably heard 7,000 people are being laid off. You also heard, and we talked about this really sneaky move that Bob Iger did where he told employees they would need to be working actually at the office at least 4 days a week. And you can have 1 day at home on a Friday. So employees are fighting that. They're signing petitions saying, hey, come on, Bob Iger, we don't want to do that. We don't want to have to work. We're communities of color and stuff like that. I mean, literally, they're talking about how it hurts marginalized employees and all that. You know, the thing is this wasn't done because he cares about people working at home or not. This was done because they needed to have kind of a tricky way, a soft layoff method to start getting more people out of the company because the overhead at Disney and the expenses at Disney are absolutely massive. Of the 7,000 people being laid off, and that doesn't include these 2,300 people that signed off necessarily, of those 7,000 people, half of them are just some random marketing position. They hired 30,000 more people in 2022 than they had in 2021. For what possible purpose? I'm sure somebody was doing something useful. You'd have to kind of wonder what it was going to be. But after the last earnings call and after Nelson Peltz put so much pressure on Disney, the billionaire investor who pushed Disney to make sensible business changes and focus on making money again, Bob Iger announced all of these changes, which seemed to be almost exactly like what Nelson Peltz said he wanted, but not completely what he wanted. There is still the matter of Disney producing content that isn't focused on good stories and good storytelling and isn't focused on the brands and properties it controls. Of course, like Marvel, of course, like Star Wars. But Nelson Peltz isn't done. Now, I did a video about this. Nelson Peltz is not done. It's got a very cute Godfather impression because to me, he looked like the Godfather in that picture. And I think he kind of coordinated a lot of the changes we've already seen. However, this was, 6 days ago. I just came across this today. One of you great guys showed this to me. Disney clash with activist Nelson Peltz will have a sequel, aka Nelson Peltz is not done. But we're going to get into the article. This is from Reuters. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. Really appreciate you guys. Activist investor Nelson Peltz often plays a long game. So his truce with Walt Disney Company last week after a short bid to get a seat on the media's group board might seem uncharacteristic. But earlier battles at Dupont and Procter Gamble suggest that plot twists aren't out of the ordinary, raising the possibility that Peltz may still get what he asked for. Disney chief executive Bob Iger unveiled $5.5 billion of cost cuts last week when the $200 billion theme parks to streaming company released fourth quarter earnings. On the face of it, that was enough to get Peltz, who had complained about Disney's over-the-top compensation packages and lack of overall cost discipline, to call off the dog. Quote, "The proxy fight is over," a spokesman for his outfit Trian Fund Management told Reuters. Disney said it appreciated the decision. The problem is that Peltz has only gotten half of what he typically wants. The New York-based activist investor carries a mug around his office that reads, "Sales up, expenses down." Yet the challenge of getting Disney's top line to grow faster, which is what sales are, total revenues, which Peltz sketched out in a presentation on a now unavailable website, restorethemagic.com, hasn't been fully addressed. While revenue of $23.5 billion in the first quarter of the year was 8% higher than the previous year, subscribers on Disney Plus, the group's streaming product, fell slightly. Revenue in the division that runs Disney's traditional TV networks like ABC and sports channel ESPN was down 5% compared to the same quarter the previous year to $7.3 billion. Fixing this is far from simple. Disney Plus, the streaming business, faces serious competition from Netflix and, of course, the great Warner Bros. Discovery. Overall, Iger's firm burned more cash last quarter than it did a year earlier. True, Iger has options. A sale of ESPN has been suggested by activist Dan Loeb, although, of course, it's impossible for them to sell ESPN. As we know, ESPN supports the distribution of all of their cable networks. So with no ESPN, it'd be great to get some money in, but the problem is all their other channels would not get the rates that they need to get because it's bundled and sold together. Nor has Iger ruled out a sale of Hulu, another streaming platform in which Disney owns a 66% stake. For now, Peltz is apparently leaving Iger to decide whether shrinking is the best way to grow. What makes this harder and where Peltz could have made a difference is that Disney's governance is poor. Iger still needs to find a replacement for himself. Though he has agreed to leave after 2 years, Disney has had a bad track record when it comes to succession. Iger's previous stint as CEO saw him postpone his retirement 4 times, move to a new role as chairman, then come back to his old job when successor Bob Chapek was ousted. Granted, Peltz has already won enough at Disney to justify cooling his jets. The company's decision to slash costs was significant, and it gives him an easy victory. The company's shares are up 25% year to date. On one hand, that means Peltz is likely to have made a handsome return. Peltz made at least a few $100 million on this already. On the other hand, he ran the risk of losing the proxy fight had he pushed much further, since shareholders have less to complain about than when he started. Winning visibly is something activists like Peltz really care about. However, if you really do know Peltz's history, him not winning a proxy battle to get a seat on the board is irrelevant to him. He always gets his way pretty much anyway. And after losing a major proxy battle, he was then added to the board of another one of these major multi-billion-dollar companies because he gets his way, because it's all common sense. It's not ideological. It's about setting up the company for success. For Disney shareholders still glum about the company's performance, its shares are up 3% over the past 5 years, where the S&P index is up 50%. Peltz's history shows he doesn't need to be in the boardroom to shake things up. One example is chemical maker Dupont. Peltz first revealed a stake in 2013 and 2 years later made a bid to get on the board during the shareholder meeting flurry that U.S. companies call proxy season. He lost, but he held on to the stock and pushed from the sidelines and ultimately got what he wanted, the return of chieftain Ed Breen and a merger with Dow. There's also Peltz's high-profile war with P&G. An acrimonious bid for a board seat at the household product maker ended in failure after shareholders voted against him, or so it seemed initially. A recount suggested that he won, and the company began to challenge this new result, but then folded and named him onto the board anyway. Even after that, then CEO David Taylor worked closely with Peltz to reshape P&G. A few years later, both executives joked in a CNBC interview that they were buying furniture together. Could Peltz still end up on the Disney board? It's not out of the question. His battle with the Magic Kingdom would have been an early test of a new voting arrangement for U.S. companies whereby activist nominees for board seats can appear on the same voting card as the company's own choices. Previously, shareholders had to pick between one slate or another. Disney is still a tough fortress to storm because of its disparate shareholder base and much-loved all-American brand, but if it turns out that the universal proxy hands successes to activists and other firms this season, it may give Peltz an opportunity to revive his boardroom quest later. For now, looking like a team player isn't a bad thing for the seasoned cage rattler. Other activists, too, are increasingly trying to go friendlier routes. Bill Ackman has said he's trying to work in a more collaborative way when he works with companies he targets. Calling a truce based on Disney's efforts burnishes a reputation for being reasonable, whereas losing a proxy fight might have had the opposite effect. But if Disney's performance doesn't improve, the Mouse House probably hasn't heard the last squeak from its uninvited guests. So, as we said, Nelson Peltz is not done. We should expect to hear more from him. But there are more things changing in the world you may not be aware of. For example, from the Daily Mail, goodbye anti-bias training. Target, Wells Fargo, and Amazon, major companies, are among companies ditching woke diversity teams as they cut costs. So-called diversity staff have been hit hardest in the wave of U.S. corporate layoffs. Their workshops on microaggressions and anti-bias training ruffled feathers. Target, Capital One, Amazon, Applebee's, and Wells Fargo saw the biggest DEI cuts. And this is going across corporate America. Partly it's because these departments are expensive. This brainwashing of staff is ridiculous. It's really not necessary. Companies need to be focused on making money, delivering for their customers, making sure they're making quality products and services. They don't have time for this stuff. None of this was brought up by Peltz. Peltz never said anything about, there's too much diversity, there's too much focus on woke material at Disney, but we also know that Peltz works very closely with Ike Perlmutter, and Ike Perlmutter knows very well what the focus has been at Disney and the distractions that they've had, where they're basically just trying to change the world with their inclusion strategies. As they've said, their executives have said their not-so-secret gay agenda, propagandizing cartoons for children. This is not something that makes money. It may affect the culture in a way that Disney executives would like, or the board of directors would like, but it doesn't actually make money. And a lot of people actually don't like it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think that Disney is done with Nelson Peltz? I really don't think they are. I think, as this article points out, Peltz's policy is, look, expenses down, but revenues up. How is Disney going to get their revenues up? It's one thing to delay the release of Marvel shows that people don't want to see, but at some point they have to start focusing on producing content that people want to see to get the revenues up. I don't think Bob Iger wants to do it. It may be that Bob Iger is never forced to do it. But keep in mind, Bob Iger is going to be there for only another 2 years, and now it's 22 months. It's not 2 years anymore. His time is running out. The board is going to have a strategy that makes sense to the investors, where they're going to be dealing with a recharged Nelson Peltz who's going to come after them again. Someone's going to have to do something with the content to get those revenues to go up. Even if they sold off ESPN or if they sold off Hulu, it'll buy them time, but it's not going to generate new revenues by shrinking the company. They're not producing the kind of content that people want. Major companies are doing layoffs of all of this anti-bias training and all these diversity staff people. And it's not necessarily Disney just yet. We have to see what their layoffs look like, and the complaining is when that finally comes out. Disney, in trying to maintain its position and not having to go backwards on their inclusion focus for their content, is very likely to be more aggressive with cost cutting, because they're going to basically cut off the hand to save the arm, if you know what I'm saying. That's the expression. Let me know what you think of this in the comments below. Do you think that Disney's gotten rid of Nelson Peltz? Because it's not just me saying it anymore. Now it's Reuters as well, starting to say, hey, Peltz is not finished. He's going to have a sequel. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.